Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting webinar. Get your popcorns, get your coffee, get some snacks. This webinar is going to be incredible. It's going to be exciting and nerdy at the same time. So we're going to talk about how to close the learning gaps with timely insights and AI-powered solutions. So it's all about how do we revolutionize remediation. A lot of R's and hard for me. So Dan, we have an incredible speaker with us today, a guest speaker, Dan Thompson. Dan and I have worked together for the past, what has been 12 years maybe since.
It's yeah, it's been over a decade, which feels really old. Makes me feel really old to say that aloud.
Oh, you don't age, not even a bit. So it's Dan and I can talk a lot about how to make things efficient, how to like leverage the data, because it's not about data, it's what we do with the data. And then Dan and I reconnected recently, and oh my God, both of us are nerding out on how we can leverage AI for so many different things. So Dan, thank you so much for joining us today and starting this amazing session with everybody.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for joining. I really like that intro, exciting and nerdy. I've been accused of one of those before, never those together, which is kind of fun. So as Alejandra mentioned, we're going to talk about closing learning gaps and really specific how we can use just the combination of data and AI to really fast track it. So I have timely insights. You're going to hear words like immediate or almost immediate. And of course, we're talking about remediation, but really how we can speed that up to where we're not remediating after the fact, but almost real time in the moment. For us, that real time has been within 24 hours, truly, to really help our students now, again, in the moment, so they're not falling behind. So there's our faces. Let's get into the objectives. And so, if anyone has questions throughout the presentation, feel free to throw them in the chat. I know Alejandra's checking that out. Of course, you can interrupt me at any time. I'm sure people don't want to hear just my voice for the next 30 minutes or so. So we'll give them a break. So both for today and then throughout the upcoming workshop series that will be kind of on piggybacking on what we talk about today, I really want to get through these objectives. And so through today, you will have enough information to be able to take and make actionable changes in your program. And that's the goal with anything that we put together and share with you all. So one, we want to be able to analyze assessment data. And I use the word assessment data and not just exam data, because we can also look at formative assessments as well with this as a way to really make sure we want to focus in on content areas where our students are struggling and address those as quickly as possible. Secondly, we'll talk about AI tools. I'm going to talk a lot about ChatGPT. That's what I've used primarily and where I've really developed some really, really helpful prompts over the last, holy cow, almost 2 years now. We'll talk about how to integrate the resources from those AI generated prompts that we're creating, and then how to facilitate this kind of immediate and effective remediation. And then, of course, at the end, we always want to make sure anytime we're putting something into place that we're able to do some continuous quality improvement of that. So the last bit of this is how can we evaluate the remediation changes that we're making to make sure that they're worth your time and effort as well. And of course, any type of correction intervention that we do in the curriculum, we want to make sure that it's actually helping really what's our North Star at the end of the day in academia, influencing improved student outcomes. And so we just want to make sure we're most certainly doing that. So let's talk about the process. It really is a three-step process that we'll go through, and I'll highlight in depth a little bit. First and foremost, we're going to look at our data. So as anybody that's ever taught before, those of you that have taught within your program for even just a couple years, and I know I work with faculty here that have taught for decades. You all, if I gave you a quiz right now, could very, very easily rattle off the content areas in which your students typically struggle. You know that what's a difficult concept versus not versus the easy ones. You all are, obviously the content experts. However, one thing that we've noticed kind of in this post-COVID era where students were able to move throughout the academic process without necessarily comprehending the content that they should. We have students that are now struggling because, again, they weren't competent in certain content areas, and we need them to be, because those are the prereqs on which our programs are built. So this process, in addition to the content areas that faculty know are typically really difficult, also helps to pull out some other content areas that we may assume are simple, and that most students should know, when in fact they are areas of struggling. And a lot of times that's that foundational content that we're planning to build on. So when we can catch those content areas that are really foundational issues as quickly as possible and remediate them, real time in the semester, it allows those students an actual chance to be able to, understand, retain, and perform with our content as we go through the semester. So first things first is content identification, which we heavily lean on the data from that. We'll then go into the creating content with AI. It's a little bit more than just saying, hey, make me some quiz questions, or I need a case study on topic X. If you've used AI, it's really, really good. And so if you just said, I need a case study, I work in vet med. So if I say, need a case on a dog with parvo, it'll do a pretty good job. However, it's not going to create the case at a level in which we need to engage our students specifically. So we'll talk through that process of creating, and then we need some deliverable. And the focus on the deliverables is going to be how we can get students to engage with that content. In years past, we've done the thing where we've posted Word docs or PDFs of case studies or problem sets. And we know this even from our time as students. It's very simple. Let's just use a case study as an example. If you post a case study for students in a static document, like a Word or a PDF, human nature is that there's going to be a certain percentage of students that are going to scroll to the bottom and look and see what the diagnosis and treatment plan is for that patient. Therefore, they're going to read the rest of the case through those rose-colored lenses that they know that what the issue is with the case, when they might not necessarily have understood it. I kind of refer to this as like almost like the Jeopardy principle, the game show Jeopardy, where if you're watching on your couch and they ask the question and you're trying to think of the answer before the contestant says it, and they say it, and then of course, we innately as humans go, oh, I knew that. But did you really know it if you weren't able to recall it in the moment? Maybe not. Maybe you had heard it before. But that's kind of how students are, is that if they know what the answer is already, they're kind of looking at it like, oh yeah, I know what this is. We want to take away that false sense of security and truly create these remediations in ways where students are applying the content. And we'll talk through that here in a moment. So first step, student performance analysis. So in anything that we do with this, when I first started going through this process, it's really, Alejandro said it in the opening, exciting and nerdy, and that, you get excited about something. And Alejandro and I share this trait that we both are doers, and we get excited about something and we want to go. And I know for me personally, every now and again, I'll get to step, 6 or 7 down the path, and I'll kind of have to recenter. So what we always want to do first, just to make sure that we're built a solid foundation, is to set goals and really focus on which areas of student performance you would like to evaluate. So for example, in our dashboard, we have everything in vet med, from species, body systems, competencies for our accreditation requirements and benchmarks for our students. We even look at Bloom's taxonomy levels. We even break down how it was taught in the classroom as well, to see if there's ways so we can really find a really good combination of, okay, what's the content area where students are struggling? Also, how was it taught? And then we can make sure that we're addressing, creating the remedial cases in a way to where if students are performing well, if we taught it a certain way, that we're able to replicate that, versus if they were struggling, then we can obviously go a different route. So always be cognizant, first and foremost, when you think about what dashboards you're going to look at or create, is that what do you want to evaluate? And then it's time to collect your data. So for us, if it's, I have the example here, we use ExamSoft and Canvas. So we have dashboards that can be populated by both of those systems. So What do you want to review from your dashboards and really go in and collect that data specifically? If you have the game plan and you have the dashboard set, then it's super simple to go in and look at your dashboards. For us, since what we're talking about quite a bit is content areas, that's a big focus as well, is to look at the specific content areas where students are struggling, so that, it may be, as a specific example, recently, in one of our musculoskeletal courses, we were I was helping a faculty member to identify, again, the areas where students are struggling, and for us, it was myopathies, which was just a content theme through 3 or 4 lectures for a specific faculty member. However, it wasn't, the name of a lecture. It wasn't something, that a big topic for an entire unit. It was just something that we had seen throughout several lectures. Because we were able to pull data on that, we were able to very easily see that that was an area of concern, and therefore we could address that. So as you see on point B here too, under number 2, it's a big point of emphasis for us as well, is to combine that quantitative and qualitative. So oftentimes, if you have, various, data streams that you're able to evaluate and make decisions on, sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of a guide on where to look specifically. So our qualitative data a lot is asking students. We'll do an exit ticket, with which, if that's something new to you, it's just basically, at the end of class, instead of doing the classic any questions from the faculty perspective, you flip that and you ask students to perform something for you at the end of class as an exit out of class. So for us, it's something as simple as, hey, name 2 concepts that have been really challenging for you over the last, 4 lectures or unit, or whatever duration of time is best for you. And so we're able to take that, and just on the positive side, oftentimes we'll also ask, what are 2 concepts that you've learned or relearned that throughout this unit? So we have a good idea of the positive side, and also areas where students are identifying what's difficult for them. We then will compare their feedback, that qualitative data, with the quantitative data, and where that crossover is where we can focus on creating those remedial modules. So the neat thing around that is that also can kind of pull out the content areas where, students might have this sense of confidence that they maybe shouldn't have around. So if they said, they are learning this and feel good about it, however, recent, quiz or other formative assessment scores show that they haven't necessarily performed well on that content, we're able to focus on that as well. And that's a good way to also evaluate your teaching as well. If students feel confident, but they really are struggling in a content area, again, it's a good way to create modules around that. But then also, it's really helpful just to understanding your own teaching. So, and I've mentioned this already kind of to point 3, but we want to analyze that data and find our areas of concern. And that's really what we're doing throughout all of this is, looking at exam scores. If you don't have current, data from your current semester, especially related to summative exams, and you want to look at those, obviously go look at previous semesters. Those tend to be trends anyway, across, semester to semester where students are struggling. So if you have those content areas identified from last year, the year before, or before that, and so forth and so on, that is a great starting point for you as well. You can still take that qualitative data, those exit tickets, and combine that content, but it is a great way to start there with that performance analysis. So now that we have our analysis set, and we've identified, so at this point, we went through the data, we know where students are struggling, we have our list of, and the example I've using, my list for in this recent course was myopathies. Okay. So if you are a content expert, if you work in medicine or vet medicine and you know what myopathies are, awesome. I don't, but through the power of AI and working with content experts, we're able to still fast track this. If you're not a content, if you're an instructional designer or faculty development person like I am, that's perfectly okay too. All this content is something that I've been able to generate through my role as well. So for those non-content experts, just for the workflow of this, after having the areas where students are struggling, after doing that evaluation, I then interviewed the content expert, the faculty member that taught this content, and just said, hey, what do they need to know about myopathies? Well, apparently there's different types of myopathies. So students needed to be able to identify those. They also needed to know etiologies and to be able to match those with myopathies. So just having that information, I'm able to understand, okay, what type that and if you are faculty and it's your content, just reflect and think about that as you see here for your set goals. Identify the content, but also the level at which students need to learn it. And I jump down to point 3. This is what I ask my faculty and ask them to ask themselves is, how do you want students to prove that they've learned the content? And when you can identify the content and at the level at which they need to know it and how you want them to prove that they've learned it, that really you're going to answer the question of what types of interactions do I need to make for students? What type of content do I need to make for students? So in this regard, in this example that I'm using for this presentation, and now that I know that they needed to be able to identify different types of myopathies, and they needed to learn to be able to match myopathies with etiologies. Well, there's a key term, match. I was able to make a number of matching assessments for students in our remedial module. Conversely, it's able to make a number of cases, short case scenarios where students had to identify the type of myopathy. And so we're really the goal here, and we'll get to this in a couple slides, is to, again, identify what they need, the level at which they need to learn it, and how they need to prove to you they've learned it. Even when it is something basic recall, I strongly suggest that you make when we go through the AI creation and prompts, that we make these in a way that are requiring students to apply the content that they've learned. If students are, when we're creating this remedial content, which tends to be formative assessment based, it will be something where we're asking students to do something with the material. It's not simply just pointing them back to a PowerPoint, because that can still be kind of passive. We want them to be actively applying the content learned. And in that process, if they're struggling with the content, to be able to answer, and apply the content we're asking them to apply, they're going to have to go and research and look up the information. So they'll still be going to the PowerPoints or PDFs or links or whatever that you've posted in your LMS for them to review. They're just doing it with a purpose because they're looking for specific things and they're active learning that content. And so this is working as a method for us to be able to control the flow of how students are engaging with the content, but also requiring them to actively be participants in their own learning, even outside of the classroom. So a few things about this AI content creation. One, we do this often as self-paced modules. I mentioned before, don't post Word and PDF documents. You're going to see that as a note on a slide in 2 slides anyway. But we want it to be something that's engaging for students, but again, it's outside of class. Our goal also with this is to make it something to where it's only 10 to 15 minutes of student time. We're not trying to change their study plan. We're not trying to take over their time. We know that students, especially in health professions education, already don't have a whole lot of extra time in their days and evenings. So we want it to be something to help them direct their learning, but also, since we're engaging them in the content, we want the module to be an actual learning process in and of itself, not simply just a review material, but something that is actually engaging and guiding student learning. And we can definitely do that with the AI. Some other points before we get into kind of the prompt thoughts and the deliverables. One, I'll put your learning objectives and lecture materials to work for you. I know we have some prompts that we'll be able to share with you all that I've used quite a bit over the last couple of years that have really created some useful, successful materials for us. But when you're creating the AI materials, you want the content to be in line with what you've already taught and with what your expectations are for students. And there's no better way to do that than to use your objectives and your teaching materials. So as I always in my role, I get permission from, the faculty first, of course, because I'm going to put some of their content into AI, but I always prompt it to to make sure that students are achieving their the learning objectives. And I always give it learning materials. If you have the paid version, I'm talking about ChatGPT here, you can add documents, which is great. It's 20 bucks a month. No disclaimers here. I don't work for them. That's just what the price is. But the free version, you can still copy and paste a lot of that text from the your PowerPoints or PDFs or whatever into ChatGPT as well. So there still is utility there if you have the free version. But again, if you use that content, it's going to create the assessments that you ask it to create: cases, problem sets, matching, fill in the blank, you name it, whatever you want. However you want students to prove that they've learned the material, it will create it using your terminology to answer your objectives. So it's naturally going to be in line with what you've taught, which is really great. It's going to really reduce the amount of editing that you're going to have to do. One disclaimer or point to make here too, a couple of years ago, I was presenting with a colleague at a conference about AI, and we had a question asked to us, and it's just stuck with me obviously for a couple of years now, as what our biggest concern with the use of AI is. And my initial thought at the time, and I'm still kind of sticking with this, is human complacency. That it's really good, it's only getting better, and it's very easy for us as human beings to scan through and go, hey, that's really good. It's been good. I'm going to trust it. And obviously that's a red flag. We want to make sure that we're always vetting the content with a fine-tooth comb, because this is content we're giving to our students that they're going to use to improve their learning and be assessed on. And so this is an important part of their learning process. So please, please, please make sure that you always review it with a fine-tooth comb. Finally, I always like to add the why to this. So when we create these modules, we tell our students why we're making them, just so they understand. And I always use this term that we want to be clear, concise, and transparent. So I just posted something yesterday for our students. It was a way of activating prior knowledge, as AI created content as a way of getting students ready for a difficult lecture concept. So we let them know, hey, this is available for your review. It's not for points. It's going to help you prepare for the lecture. Make sure you know that the basic terms and concepts for the lecture coming up. That we also always make sure we talk to our students about the value of self-assessment, so that you're getting this content, you're getting these modules as an opportunity to be able to self-assess your own performance. So if you are struggling in certain areas, that you can that you should self-identify that and make sure that you're studying those materials. As a final kind of cap to all this with AI as well, we always add rationales or explanations to the end of any of the content that we produce for students, so that we don't want this, especially for the faculty in the room, we don't want this to be something where you post, a problem set for students, and then you have 50 students emailing you or at your door. We want this to be something that is self-sustaining, allows students to self-assess, and it prompts students to go, as I was saying before, review and learn the material on their own, self-assess, and then also get the feedback. Just as a important point, you should never have any sort of formative assessment without having feedback to give students, to let them know if their response was correct or not, and then always, always, always the why. We don't want to say, hey, you got an 85%. We're going to tell them why they didn't get that 15% correct. We also want to tell them why something was correct, especially if you're doing multiple choice. There's a very good chance that students can guess correctly, since there is a certain percent chance you can get lucky and guess correct. So we want to give them the why of why things are correct. So anytime, and you'll see in these prompts that we're able to share with you all, anytime that we create any sort of problem sets, I always ask for a rationale or explanation explaining why the correct answer is correct, and also asking it to explain why the incorrect answers are incorrect. One pro tip here too, if you want to do open-ended questions, you can ask it to create an ideal answer. So we always make sure that after we prompt students to answer open-ended questions, that we do provide that ideal answer as well, so they have an immediate feedback element there too. Okay, so we've identified our issues where students are learning. We've looked at our data. We've married that a little bit with some qualitative information. We've created our, we've set a goal on what students need to learn, kind of go back here, what students need to learn. We're using our materials, our objectives, and we're going to know the level at which we want to create these engagements for students. We've also given students the why they should use them. For the record, a lot of these that we make aren't for points. By a lot, I mean over 90%. And we still have a very high student buy-in. We get well over 85% of our students engaging with the content. So that obviously includes students that are doing well in the course that still want that extra practice. And that's all a product of us being really transparent with them. Then we get to content delivery. So when we want to have it, again, be in this asynchronous student engagement. And so for us, here's the process. After we have our prompts created, where we tell AI, hey, based on these objectives, based on these lecture materials, I want X amount of multiple choice questions. Give me an explanation and rationale. I want X amount of open-ended questions. I want X amount of questions to activate students' prior knowledge for an upcoming lecture. Whatever it is that you want, be very clear with the AI, and that's kind of one of the notes in the prompt sheet that I have for you all. Once we have that information, then it's time to find the content delivery for that tool. For those, again, just to step back, if you are not the content expert in the room, like I'm not the content expert, my workflow from this is after I have ChatGPT create whatever, the prompts and assessments, the case studies, whatever it is that we want. I always put that into a Google Doc, so we have a shared document that we can edit real time. Ask the faculty to vet that content. They add, edit, delete, whatever they need to do. They ping me and say, hey, it's ready to go. And now I know I have the most recent document, because Google Docs are living docs, which is really great. And then we can deliver the content however that we would like. So it's a really helpful in that way. And then also, just another tip, if you look at the content that the AI produces and you go, ooh, this just really is not good, don't waste your time trying to edit something that your initial response is, oh, this is bad. Go and look at your prompt and just ask yourself, what about that? What was bad about it? So often, if faculty just verbally tell me, hey, I didn't like this, Dan, because of X, Y, and Z, whatever verbal explanation they gave to me, I just type it right back into the system and give it that same exact feedback, because usually that feedback they give me is the best feedback. And it's not something I need to try to wordsmith or edit in any way. And then I have it redo, whatever prompt that they gave me. So, and any of those prompts that you see from me, those have all been things that have evolved over time because of faculty feedback. So again, I mentioned this before, so I won't belabor this point. We want to prompt students to apply key concepts. Again, more than just Word, PDF, PowerPoint, those are static documents that we don't control the pace at which it's moved through. Students do. They can go to the end just as easily, and then we can kind of reduce the effectiveness of our assessment that we created. You can, to the best of your ability, tell them not to do that. That can be part of that clear, concise, and transparent if that's all you have. But then we're also going to lose some of that 0.5 here, where it's really tough to collect some of that data on student performance on these and add it to our collection of data to make future decisions on, because it would just be a static document. Again, I mentioned this, and I'll always mention this, but build in that feedback. Make sure that, so our order of operations, just for example, is, let's say I have a case study with 5 questions and a problem set after it. I will, obviously have the case study delivered first, the scenario, a 2-year-old, dog presents with blah, 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 and so forth and so on, and whatever information that you have. If this is something for health professions education, if you all work in health professions education, you'll see some of those prompts that I have are truly like, where's my camera? Yay long. It's about a whole page in a Word doc, because I want some very specific information in some of those. And I always prompt it for more info than I need or than my faculty needs, because it's easier to delete than it is to add. So, but then the workflow is, you have your case information in there. Question 1, At the end of question 1, we have the rationale for question 1. Question 2, rationale for question 2, and so forth and so on. And as I mentioned before, we do like to vary the types of assessments from matching to open-ended to fill in the blank, short answer, multiple choice. Just to, even with a case study, for example, if you have, if your remediation is that students need to be able to apply these concepts to come up with a diagnosis and treatment plan, we still will do that and prompt students to try and think at a higher level like that. I always follow those cases up with some open-ended and multiple choice questions as well, because it's a great way to be able to re-emphasize those key concepts that they were supposed to pull out. So if there's something about the fizz or the path or the farm or something you want to highlight in those cases, that double down on that with the multiple choice items at the end. It's a great way to get students to identify and focus and self-assess on those important concepts. And it's a great way to get more feedback for you as well. So just remember that. And ultimately at the end, whether it's a licensure exam or it's your exam, we're often preparing students for some level of multiple choice exam. So I do like to get them to actually look at distractors and think in that way, in addition to being, and for our sake, thinking clinically too. So some tools that we'll delve into in mid-December. But again, as far as like making this more interactive, Canvas, if you use that for your LMS, there's great ways you can use the quizzing tool in there. I'm going to jump to ExamSoft. ExamSoft is, if you think about it, essentially a slide-based delivery tool, because each question is its own page. So if we think of it like that, we can deliver a question, then a rationale, a question, then a rationale. And I've actually done that before where, question 1 technically was the multiple choice question, and question 2 was an essay question where I basically just delivered the answer rationale in line, so that we didn't have to do the review afterward. It literally was just in the actual assessment itself. We just take away backward navigation if we do that. Nearpod, Kahoot, and Quizzes are all web-based tools, if you haven't used them before, that can be created in a linear way that allows students to engage with content with these different question types as well. So between these 5 tools that we have here, undoubtedly we will be able to find a way for you to be able to deliver that content in a way that, again, engages students, provides built-in feedback, and gets you the data you need to do tip number 5, and use this as an opportunity to collect data on student performance. And so, kind of to put a bow on all of this, and then we'll stop and take some questions, is so now that we've had this whole process, it's really this circular process, right? We take the data that we have, we identify the content areas where students are struggling, we use AI to create that content expert vets it, we create it in one of these more interactive tools where students are going to be engaged with the content and also encouraged to look up content or information they may need to answer the questions. But then that's kind of feeding the beast more for us, because we can then take that content, especially if it's something like an ExamSoft or a Canvas, where you can then have tagged categories or outcomes to feed back into Enflux. So then you have this dashboard that's continually growing in the back end, so that your dashboards are becoming something that are actively evolving and growing over time, and continuously providing you the feedback you need to focus in on student remediation and where students struggle. And at the end of the day, we have this process that is truly meeting students where they're at. We're differentiating remediation real time during the semester. And just in case this isn't a question, typically when we focus on these for just between myself and a faculty member, we can turn around these modules in a day. So if we look at the data and see students are struggling in a specific area, by end of business the next day, we can have something available to them so that they can study. Anyway, with that, I will take a break and turn it back over to Alejandra and anyone else that may have some questions.
Wonderful. This is so informative, and I'm gonna just share my screen. People are asking about the workshops. When are they starting? When are the dates? So I would, on our follow-up email, would send you a link to the recording of today's session. And then we'll also send you a link to this page where you can see the details about every single workshop. The dates are December 5th, 12th, and 19th at 12 p.m. Eastern time, and they're about an hour long. So we're breaking it into different separate sessions so that we can really dive deep into how to leverage AI for student remediation. Dan, anything you want to share with the audience about the 3 weeks?
Yeah, so each of those weeks of the workshops will highlight each step of the process that I highlighted today, but really go in depth to where everyone that participates will be able to actually practice and walk away with something created, whether it's understanding where specifically to look into your dashboards or be thoughtful about what dashboards that you're creating or finding information from, which will be step one. Workshop 2 will be really focused on the AI prompts and to make sure that we get the right content out of those. And then the third will be the content delivery. So then also the tail end of that of collecting even more data to then again kind of create that loop that I mentioned a moment ago. And throughout all of those, I promise I'll follow my own rules and we'll set goals as for you all as individuals and then also as our groups to make sure that we do have kind of a North Star that can be something that we follow so that when you walk away after that, you'll have a process that's sustainable.
Thank you, Dan. And just something to clarify with everybody, like because we use data that is inside of Enflux, the workshops are designated for Enflux customers. If you're not a customer and want to be part of the workshop, please book with us a 15-minute call to see if and how this workshop can help you in your program. Corey will meet with you. She's our Director of Growth and Strategy to strategize on how can this workshop benefit your program. If you're a customer, just reply to the email and let us know I want to be part of the workshop and we'll make sure to add you to the calendar invites. Really exciting to see how everyone's going to start leveraging AI for this. Dan, a question that I had nerding out is, you were talking about how to improve the prompt, right? Like go and check how the prompt is structured and see what did you write that was misleading for AI. I wanted to ask you, have you ever tried reverse engineering, like putting a case study or something and say, if I want this, what kind of prompt should I have? And have AI write the prompt for you. So you give AI perfection and then ask AI, can you write the prompt for me that I can utilize for other things?
You know what's interesting? I haven't done that's a great idea. I haven't done that. I have given it examples and said, "Hey, can you see this?" And of course it says yes. And then I'll say, "Hey, for the next so many for us, we just do condition and species, right? Dog and what it presents with, cat and what it presents with." And then I'll say apply this to this case format to all, other scenarios that I give you, and it'll build that. But I should ask it for the prompt too. That might be something fun to be able to reverse engineer. Oh, I'm gonna steal that. That's good.
The other question that I have from Felicia Grapes is, will week 2 focus primarily on ChatGPT or multiple AI tools?
Great question. I will introduce multiple tools for the sake of being able to kind of focus on one tool to maximize our productivity. Well, ChatGPT will be at the center of it, but I will discuss other tools, especially related to professional education and different areas of professional education.
Wonderful. Looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we don't have any other questions. As I mentioned, we're really excited to start this new cohort of how to leverage AI for student remediation. It starts on December 5th. If you're a customer, don't worry, we'll send you the information where you can register. If you're not a customer, also don't worry. We would like to meet with you to learn about your program needs and how the workshop can be a good fit, and we can register to the workshop. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in the workshop, and please provide us feedback or any ideas of what other topics would like for us to do in these webinars. Dan, thank you so much for doing this session today. It's really
Of
informative. Like I
course.
said, it's exciting and nerdy.
Yeah, my pleasure. And if anyone has any questions, my email address is on the screen. So feel free to give me a shout. Always happy to nerd out one-on-one as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Happy Wednesday.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.